you made some more experimental albums since you released the first part. But did you feel that you had to follow, the traditions from the first album when you wrote this?
Yeah, in a sense. What we tried to do is we went back and really studied the first one. And we went out and performed it, actually, for almost a year. And really kind of wrapped our heads around the story and the musical presentation. Kind of went back and relearned Queensrÿche thinking from 1980s. And we noticed that there were several musical themes that kept reoccurring within the first Mindcrime. So we wanted to bring those kind of theme ideas into the second Mindcrime presentation. And so we did that. We followed some of the same musical ground rules that we set with the first one. Like we went back to standard A440 tuning for this record. And I love that. I mean, everything sounds in tune to me now. I never did like that whole drop tuning thing. But it's just, we tried to make it sound like if you put both albums back to back and listen to them, you'd be in the same place as a listener. You wouldn't be too far away, that they sound like there's a similarity going on there.
Okay. But still it's possible to hear the 18 years between? I
think so, yeah. I think you'll hear, musical maturity. You'll hear, differences in certain areas. You'll hear, one of the things I think that we did really well on this record is, we're sort of known as, in some circles, as a progressive metal band, And so what we've tried to do is take really strong song elements, like verse and chorus and bridge parts, and then make those very easy to understand for the listener, musically speaking, really signature, catchy melodies and that kind of thing. And then we wrap the whole song in sort of interesting technical breaks where we change time signatures and really, from a musician standpoint, if you listen to it, some of the stuff is really difficult to figure out. It's very difficult musical time signature changes and modes. So we've kind of blended the two ideas together of very progressive technical music with very pop melodic melodies. Which I think is really unique and different. I think if you listen to a lot of progressive rock music, as a listener, you get very overwhelmed and kind of bored with it because it doesn't catch your ear and keep you there, because it's always changing so much within the format of the song. It sort of becomes like an exercise in gymnastics, rather than an exercise in song structure. So what we try to do is blend the two ideas together.
There's a lot of music on this album. Did it take long to make and write the music and also record it? Was it a long process?
Yeah, it was 18 months. It was quite a work, quite a lot of work, but fun, very challenging at times, incredibly challenging. An album like this has a lot of different emotions that it tries to express and cover because it's a story. And so what we try to do is wrap music around those emotions, to make a nice little package, so to speak. And so there's a lot of different kinds of songs, a lot of different sorts of musical arrangements. There's a lot of very classical orchestration and classical style guitar playing on this record. There's some really heavy, in-your-face rhythmatic tracks that are in very strange time signatures that will take people years to learn. And I know it took me about a year to learn how to sing one of the songs on the record.
Really?
And I wrote it, so that's how tough it is. And then there's some very beautiful ballads and some very strange atmospheric pieces of music. There's all kinds of different things. So one couldn't take one track or two tracks and say, this is representative of the album, because it just wouldn't be. Yeah. If you listen to like the original Mindcrime album, the snare drum and the kick drum and the guitar sounds are all the same throughout the whole record. It's a very kind of linear sounding recording. And what we tried to do on this record was change the sounds of the instruments per song to help paint a better picture, a more unique picture of that moment, in the story. And so you won't hear the same kick drum or snare drum sound per song. It's all different. And the guitar sounds are an array of different guitars we used on this record. So each track, I think, sounds unique. And what makes it sound cohesive is the style in which it was written. The people that wrote the song have a certain way of phrasing things, and that's what makes it unique.
Then I understand why it took so long to record the album. I mean, with different sounds for each song.
And things. So one couldn't take one track or two tracks and say, this is representative of the album, because it just wouldn't be. If you listen to like the original Mindcrime album, the snare drum and the kick drum and the guitar sounds are all the same throughout the whole record. It's a very kind of linear sounding recording. And what we tried to do on this record was change the sounds of the instruments per song to help paint a better picture, a more unique picture of that moment, in the story. And so you won't hear the same kick drum or snare drum sound per song. It's all different. And the guitar sounds are an array of different guitars we used on this record. So each track, I think, sounds unique. And what makes it sound cohesive is the style in which it was written. The people that wrote the song have a certain way of phrasing things, and that's what makes it unique.
Then I understand why it took so long to record the album. I mean, with different sounds for each song. So
yeah, it wasn't a record. See, like when we did Mindcrime, we wrote the record, and then we went into the studio and recorded it in like 6 weeks. It was boom, 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 boom. There wasn't any time to look back at the record and think after you record a song and go, did we nail that? Did we make that as best as we could? Or should we replace that snare drum with a different snare drum to make it sound more unique? No, and there's no time. All the drums were done at once, And on this record, years later, we have the luxury now of going in and doing a drum track for a song and then building the rest of the track up around it over days, months. And then maybe next month, another drum track will be done on a different song. So you get a variance of sound that way, instead of having everything sound the same all the way through.
You said you had planned the sequel since the first album. Is all the music new, or did you have some parts from the earlier days that you saved for this album?
No, all the music is new. It's over the last, I guess, two years maybe.
When it comes to the lyrics, I mean, you obviously had the storyline ready since the first album, but did you write all the lyrics now? Did you write the lyrics after you composed the music, and how was that done?
Well, I'm a note keeper and a journaler, so I keep extensive notes on things. Some of the character frameworks that you need to put together, I've been working on those for probably 7 or 8 years. I have no idea what it's like in prison. I don't have any idea what it's like to be the character that Nicky is, in some respects. So I've had to kind of build this character perspective out of him, of notes I've taken, meeting people, talking with other people that have been in prison, TV shows I've seen or movies I've seen, just kind of making up character sketches, because it's an area I have no idea about. But some of the philosophical ideas and things that Nicky talks about throughout the record, that's more of me talking there. And I've gotten that perspective through living as long as I have and just doing what I do, So, yeah, some of the stuff, lyric-wise, is, 7 or 8 years old. And then some of it's rather new over the last 2 years.
The first album is just a flashback when Nicky wakes up from a coma. Is this new album kind of real time?
Yeah, it's more real time. There's one flashback, and that's Hostage.
I talked to you before, and you said that you write a lot of the music. You compose at home, all the members, and you just email each other the files. Did you write this album the same way?
Yeah, I didn't mean to in that statement that's always the way it happens. I'm saying that, yes, we have done that in the past, emailed each other parts and put them together into a song. And some of the parts were done on this record like that, too. Yeah, a couple solos here and there were emailed back and forth.
Okay. Rob Halford was rumored as a guest vocalist on this album, but I listened to it last night when I got it, and well, it seems like Dio is singing on one of the tracks. Was Rob Halford in the picture at all?
No, that was a rumor.
Okay.
Yeah, Ronnie was always the choice for Dr. X. Yeah.
Was he in the studio with you, or did you send him the tape?
No, he came in the studio and did his part. It was fantastic working with him. He's an incredible singer. And I wrote the part and sent it to him and said, "What do you think? Is this something you can do?" And he said, "Absolutely. I'd love it. I want to do it. When can I come up?" And so a week later, he showed up at the studio and walked in and was completely prepared and just nailed it, you know. And we were done in like 2 hours, and then we spent the rest of the day drinking red wine and eating.
Was the orchestration done with a real orchestra? Last time, as far as I remember, you used Michael Kamen. Is that
Michael
right?
Kamen, yes. Michael's no longer with us. We would have loved to had him work on the record with us. But in his absence, we found a gentleman who was very inspired by Michael Kamen's work, who wrote with us on this record and recorded with us. His name is Hashif Akim. And he is a very interesting Fijian Arab man. Interesting mix.
Yeah.
Yeah. His mother would come by the studio and bring us dinner.
Excellent.
Yeah. I never quite understood what kind of food it was, but it was tasty.
This album will probably gain some extra attention because of the title. Does that mean you are more excited this time than your last albums?
Well, I think I'm excited with each release we do. It's always new, you know. I love making music. I love writing songs. It's hard to get me out of the studio. So I'm happy to make records. I'm happy to, go out and talk about them and ultimately to perform them, which is my favorite part.
We talked to Scott Rockenfield before Christmas, and he said that you're planning a tour where you are performing both albums from start to end. Is that going to happen?
Yes. Yeah, that's the plan.
Okay. So that will be the next tour after the release?
Yes, which I believe is sometime in the spring. And we're going to start here in Europe.
Have you been reading on the internet people analyzing the old story and trying to figure out the answers to the questions, who killed Mary and stuff like that? I mean, it's quite entertaining to read. Have you been doing that as well?
No. I find it very difficult to go on the internet and read things that people say. You know, I have a difficult time with that, so I avoid those kind of sites, you know.
Does that mean you don't read what the critics write about the albums either?
Never. Okay. Everybody has an opinion. So, it doesn't really do me any good to know somebody else's opinion about what I do. It kind of works backwards, I think, to influence me in a negative way that I don't really particularly like. You know, I just kind of want to be able to do what it is I do. You know, and some people will like it, some people won't, and I'm okay with either way. Operation
Mindcrime is a milestone among concept albums in hard rock. Do you think it's possible that this new album will be the same huge classic as the first one?
No way of telling. Never know.
Time will tell.
Time will tell. Yeah, that's the way it is. You know, when Mindcrime first came out, it wasn't a huge success at all. In fact, most critics panned it, didn't understand it, didn't get it, because at the time, what was really popular and what was in all the magazines and on everybody's mind was Motley Crue. You know, they were huge. You know, everywhere. Everybody wanted, and they asked me, you know, why? What are you doing with this music? You know, why aren't you writing songs like Motley Crue? That's metal. That was me. So then, 18 years later, they called Mindcrime a classic. that just shows you how strange the world is, you know.